Investigation is underway tonight by police in the Free State into a reported case of assault after a group of white men allegedly attacked two black teenagers at the Sport Resort just outside Bloemfontein on Christmas Day. That's after a video was posted online by Dumi Frost. It was posted to Twitter and has now been shared across the platforms showing the alleged racist attack. AZAPO's Deputy President Kekeletso Khena is in studio for some reaction now. A very good evening to you, ma'am. Thank you so much for coming in.
Good evening.
So, when you read what's been shared about what happened at Sport yesterday, it sounds like something straight out of the 60s and 70s. Black teenagers allegedly kicked out of a swimming pool where they would have paid to be like everyone else on the basis of race.
Yeah, so this is, just another story of racism in South Africa. We've been dealing with racism repeatedly, especially I think it was last month already, that we were dealing with Mago. And for us, it's, at the point where we're just completely tired of saying the same things. Racists have no place in South Africa and they must leave. The truth of the matter is that, with racism, this is how people feel. This is what they do in the comfort of their homes. It just so happens that every now and again it spills out. And so we are saying that South Africa has no place for racists. And actually, even these ones must pack up and leave. If you don't want to live with black people, you must leave. And if you don't want to be surrounded by black people, you must leave, because this is our country.
And just on what you're saying about how the racists must leave, they clearly never seem to do, because every few weeks we're dealing with a racist outburst.
The truth of the matter is that our legal system doesn't quite, it's not a deterrent. You saw what happened with Mago. She was in for a day and then she was out. So it's perfectly normal to treat black people in the manner that these men did. But not just that, the violence in which they displayed. It's normal to treat black people with this kind of violence. And we are starting to see how difficult it is to be to be black anywhere in this country, particularly in these predominantly white areas or previously white areas. I think there's just this, people are just not getting the point that South Africa is a country for all of us, and yeah, they need to do better.
And you were talking about the justice system. I was looking at the police statement earlier. It refers, in fact, where it talks about a fighting incident which took place at a holiday resort in Bloemfontein. It says that police are investigating a case of assault, common assault, and the docket will be taken to court for a decision. But from that phrasing, there isn't a direct investigation into a racist motive for the assault itself. Do you think that's exactly where things begin to fall apart as far as making racism punishable by law?
Except for the hate crimes laws in the bills, there's not really much. But the truth of the matter is that the South African police services is generally inept. They don't know how to apply South African laws. They don't know how to charge people. Even every time that we've laid a case, they must go and find somebody who understands case law before a case can be opened. So the truth of the matter is that we don't have a police service that understands the laws around racism and hate crimes in this country.
Do you think, though, that prosecuting racism and racists would ultimately help South Africa get rid of it?
The laws that were designed are not designed to really act as a deterrent against racism. We know for a fact that, even way back, you look at what TRC did. TRC was a choice over reconciliation, over justice. And so people have just taken liberties, and the law has actually allowed it. So if you look at what the law is today, it's designed around protecting racism, because if in fact racists felt the full might of the law, and we've had so many of them. At most, you spend a few years in jail, and only to come out and dehumanize our people consistently. And you see, the funny part is that people look at it and they just see this one incident. But as a black person that is sitting here right now, it just takes you 1,000 times back. It takes you to every time you go to a shop, every time you go to the mall, and every time you get treated badly in the workplace. The racism in this country is embedded in all our systems. And every time something like this, it just hurts a little bit more.
I mean, I'm from Bloemfontein, right? I know exactly where Sport Resort is. Everyone goes, and when the decision to go is made, it's not one that people often have to think about in terms of, oh, am I going to be assaulted and subjected to racial abuse in a swimming pool at a resort, no less. But often when we talk about racism, we deal with the headline-grabbing incidents, but coming from a small city, a small town, one is very aware of just how common it is and how people get away with it in the main, unless in this case of alleged racism, it's caught on video and distributed.
But that's exactly it. That's what I'm trying to say, that we have so many racists in this country. And it's just that every now and again they slip up. They're racist in their home, they're racist in their workplace, they're racist everywhere. It's just that every now and again they just slip up. So the truth of the matter, and what we'd like to tell racist white South Africans, like these ones that we are going to come and find, that you have no place in this country. We will come and drag you to the airport because we are tired of taking you to court and saying, you know, so you spend a few months there. The truth of the matter is that you don't want to live amongst us. Azania belongs to black people. If you cannot deal with that, then pack your bags and leave. And the state is not going to help black people by restoring their dignity. They failed in their last 28 odd years to do that. They're not even trying. So we are saying to the state itself, we will go and fight for our people ourselves, and we will go and drag the racists ourselves, because we are tired of being made to feel this way in our own country. It's completely unacceptable.
I'm sure, Kekeletso, you've heard the retort to that, right? Where the retort is often that, oh, is that a threat then to take the law into your own hands? Is that not itself not inciting a violent response?
It's a promise. It's not a threat. We're not threatening to be violent. What we're saying is that we are coming to drag you so that you can leave our country. What that means to you, I mean, that's open for your own thoughts. But the truth of the matter is that we do believe as AZAPO that people need to leave this country. If you cannot live with us, you have to leave. And we know that the state is not going to help us. So we will be coming ourselves. If you own a business and you are racist, we will be coming ourselves and dragging you out so that you can leave. Because we can't tolerate this anymore.
And I think it was the EFF today that led a demonstration, a protest at the Marcelsport Resort in Bloemfontein. I remember another confrontation not too long ago, earlier this year, I think it was in the Northwest as well. There was something as well in the Free State. Every province, you hear a story, right? And whenever that happens, there are these confrontations, be it a political party or a group of black activists who will then go and demonstrate outside of a school, a restaurant, and demand change. And then we all move on after talking about it and keeping it in the news for a while. But I wonder how real you think the chances of a national confrontation based on the issue of racism, how real do you think that is, the possibility of that actually happening, given the frequency of these incidents?
I can tell you now that the anger of our people is palpable. People are tired of being treated this way. And I think black people have been nice enough. When reconciliation was forced down our throat, we accepted it with the hopes that people are willing to share the space, with the hopes that people are willing to treat us with the dignity and the respect that we deserve. But over the years, we have seen that there is no such desire. And I think this is why we are now saying we refuse to be nice and taking people to court and sitting around the table. And really and truly, I think we are also tired of these protests because they're not really yielding results. So at some point, we need to be doing something tangible so that racists understand and they know in their hearts of hearts that the next time they have a slip-up, because that's what they are, another slip-up, that something drastic is going to happen. Because the truth of the matter is that this amount of kicking, because it's violence. I don't think people understand the violence of racism. It is violence. So, yes, maybe we are not being clapped around generally, and this is one time that we get clapped around, but it is a violence on the soul, on the way, on people. And I think it needs to be met with the same level of violence. I think we're really tired.
But there's also the frustration when we've interviewed people, certainly who've experienced racism, is that often when you complain of racism, you're asked, what did the person say? So there's a very much a focus on, was the K word used? Were you called a monkey? The more overt forms of racism. And the frustration is that often when you're trying to explain the microaggressions, people want to, that racists themselves, in fact, or those who excuse racist behavior, try to explain that away and say, well, it's all in your head, you're being too sensitive, you're imagining things. And I wonder if that is not the larger level of racism in South Africa, actually.
I think racism is a very silent thing. It's not, you know, in most instances it's not that overt. And it's also systemic. It's the same as patriarchy. It's the same as all these other oppressions that we see that are not very over the top. You don't get to see it, hear it all the time.
But you feel it, right?
You feel it, and I think that's why it is such a violence on the person. And we talk about the dignity of persons that is actually being trampled upon here. This is what we are talking about, and that's why when that happens, it hurts you. It becomes such a personal thing, because for many of us, racism is something that we experience on a day-to-day basis. Although sometimes it's very, very silent, sometimes it's the way that they look at you, sometimes it's the way that they grin at you, sometimes it's the way that they speak to you, and sometimes it's the way they slowly speak to you as though you are very stupid. So it's so subtle for all of us that every time something is big and as overt as all of this, it brings about all of that pain. And the truth of the matter, and I think this is why there hasn't been an effort in this country to educate, to sensitize and desensitize, particularly white people, on racism, its impact. But also, I think the system hasn't tried to deal with racism. You know, the truth of the matter is, if it's in fact so embedded in the system, it's embedded in the economy. And so it's white people, it's racists that are funding other racists, that are making it okay to create work cultures that are racist, that are making it okay to create environments where it's okay for people to do what they did. Because where was security, and why was this not handled? I mean, you look at how long that clip, and you like, why was there no one there to stop this from happening? Just at the level of that, but also the violence, like the physical violence that took place there. So establishments themselves thrive on violence, and they thrive on racism, because truth of the matter is, if you know that that's not acceptable, you will not be doing things like that.
With that in mind then, perhaps as a parting shot, I want to get your reaction to a comment made by the Office of the Free State Premier, Sisi Ntombela, who has described this as barbaric actions which have no place in the Free State province. What then becomes her responsibility in this instance? What should her government be doing?
I think, firstly, she should be lobbying to ensure that things like being overtly obvious that we will not tolerate racism. You know, for instance, there's a concert that I went to, and their posters, they were very clear. We will not tolerate fatphobia, we will not tolerate homophobia, we will not tolerate racism. So you can't do things like that with establishments. That's one thing. But secondly, you know, the truth of the matter is that we need to strengthen our legislation. And thirdly, SAPS does need to be trained differently and better to be able to address issues of racism in this country.
Kekeletso Khena, thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you so much for having
Deputy
us.
President speaking to us tonight about the assault on 2 black teenagers by white men in the Free State.